episode of FNP Selects. It's the new show here on the channel where we select some of our favorites from the topics that you come up with. We're only going with 3. This video, we're only going with 1 because we're talking about the best heavyweight fights of all time. And Matt, for me, there's one clear and away best fight. I watched it here in the last couple of weeks, and it's one of those ones where you can't take your eyes off the television. You're glued to it the whole time. And they're two maybe not unlikely contenders, but at the time, for me, the fight was absolutely insane. So let's go with yours. And what is the best heavyweight fight of all time that you're going to go with?
So I'm going to have a real throwback for mine. I was kind of going between DC Stipe 2, which I just think as a heavyweight fight, it showed kind of the highest skill level that really any MMA fighter can reach at this point, and it just so happened to be heavyweight. But I'm going throwback, a little blast of the past. Pride Total Conflict 2005. This was your fight of the year in 2005 for the heavyweight title. And you're probably thinking, well, Matt, you were only 7 years old when this fight happened. But guess what? We have Fight Pass. So I went back and watched it. One of the all-time great fights, without a doubt. This was Mirko and Fedor Emelianenko at the height of their powers. And I say that in a very real sense, just due to the fact that these guys were basically superheroes in their primes. Fedor was, and I mentioned on a previous video, first heavyweight MMA fighter who was really good at everything. He could wrestle, he could grapple, ground and pound, strike with you. It didn't matter where the fight was, he was going to excel. And for Mirko, if you go back, one of the greatest highlight reels of all time. Watch Mirko. He beat Jarrell Miller in a kickboxing fight not even that long ago. And Jarrell Miller was supposed to fight Anthony Joshua last year. So it just tells you, to this day, I know he's had a stroke and he's not allowed to fight anymore, but Mirko has still beat up most people. And their fight was perfect because it showed game planning in MMA at such a high level for back in the day. You got to remember, MMA had been around for, 10 years at that time?
These were it's so weird because you've got a star from Russia, a star from Croatia. They're fighting in Japan, and they're two of the biggest stars in the sport.
Exactly.
Not that they were bigger than Pride, but they were international superstars and probably bigger than a lot of the UFC stars at the time.
Exactly.
You're talking Krokop and Fedor over Randy Couture and Tim Sylvia.
Oh, 100%. Pride just had the best roster of heavyweights out there until they collapsed. But that fight was perfect. Fedor had the greatest game plan in MMA history. If a guy's southpaw, everyone tells you to move away from their power, but he was really smart. He knew that Krokov's left hand can hurt me, but the left kick's the thing I really have to watch out for. So if I keep my eyes open the whole entire fight and crowd his left side, I'm going to get hit with left straights, but he's not going to be able to wind up and hit me with that left kick. And every time Joe Rogan talks about a fighter moving in a certain direction, he always says you have to move out of the power side. But that's just one of the examples where if you are high enough level, you can get away with kind of making mistakes, if you will, that a common person would see as a mistake. But if you're as high level as 2005 Fedor Emelianenko, you can kind of do whatever. And it was an amazing fight. There was grappling, there was striking. It happened everywhere. Krokop was able to get off really good shots. He was able to hurt Fedor on multiple occasions. Fedor was able to pick up Krokop and slam him on the ground. It was just one of those fights that had a little bit of everything, no matter what you really like to watch in MMA. And it was fight of the year in 2005, which is crazy that they were even keeping track of it really back then. But even if you watch it today, it holds up just still value to this day. So that's my number one greatest heavyweight fight ever.
My fight is a fight that a lot of people go with as their number one heavyweight fight. It's 1A, 1B at this point. But for me, there's a lot of things that you might not think about if you watch this fight. And it's Bigfoot Silva Mark Hunt 1. And if you've never seen it, go back. It was UFC Fight Night 33. It happened over in Australia. And it was weird for so many different reasons. Bigfoot Silva at the time, so he won what? He won 2 or 3 fights in a row. He won 2 in a row, I guess. So he had lost to Daniel Cormier in Strikeforce. Then he lost to Cain Velasquez in his UFC debut. Then he goes on and he fights Travis Brown, knocks him out in the first round. That's prime Travis Brown back in 2012 at a time when Travis Brown was 13-0 with 1 draw. Then he beats Alistair Overeem in the 3rd round. Then he fights Cain Velasquez for the title, loses that fight in the rematch, and then he fights Mark Hunt. And at the time, if I'm not mistaken, Bigfoot Silva was ranked 4th in the division, and he was taking on Mark Hunt, who had just lost to Junior Dos Santos, and he was ranked very low in the division. But the thing that was weird for me when I was watching it, hindsight's 2020, Mark Hunt was a plus 130 underdog, and Bigfoot Silva was minus 150. What were people thinking back then? Well, that's so weird. The spread today would have been huge for Bigfoot Silva, but it wasn't. And oddly enough, maybe you bet the push or you bet the draw, but it ends up in a draw. And usually a draw, at the end of the fight, you're like, oh, well, that's crazy. I don't agree with that. No, that fight was a draw. That fight was so close for the first 2 or 3 rounds. And again, this was a 5-round main event, not for a title. But it just, like, they pour on the offense. Mark Hunt hurts Bigfoot. Bigfoot looks like he's totally out of it. And then in the next round, like, he was so tired between rounds, where you see it every now and again, where the corner people will put a fighter's legs up to try and get the breathing to regulate. Bigfoot Silva at that point, like, you'd seen him lose fights before. He wasn't supposed to lose that fight. It ends up
No.
as a draw. Like, it was a crazy fight. And at the time, too, Mark Hunt was 9-8, and he was like a slight underdog. It's crazy. Just crazy how that one kind of came together and ended up.
Isn't it wild how Bigfoot Silva, a guy not known for being able to take a punch, was able to take Mark Hunt punches, like probably the best power puncher in MMA history, and he was able to eat those shots, but like Daniel Cormier knocked him out in the first round. It's kind of wild how that works, but that's a great pick. And it's weird how it ended in no contest too. That's the thing. Like, it's one of the greatest fights ever that never really got a resolution. I know they had a rematch later on and Mark Hunt got the knockout, but it's not very often that you have a fight that's so good that ends with, no one winning at all, not even a draw. Like,
it. It's
great outcome.
You get a weird no contest, which, again, if it was a draw, I get it. If it's a no contest, that's cool too. Like, it was one of the craziest fights of all time, and it's one of those ones.
No, but they had called it a draw, but then Bigfoot Silva failed his drug test afterwards to make it a no contest. So It was just one of those really weird situations that you can only get in MMA.
So then, like, that's such a good fight. That's the best heavyweight fight of all time. If you get the chance, it's all action. It's a great one to watch. Go ahead. So they fight on that fight night card. Cool, great. It's from Brisbane. Brisbane gets a show. Then they fight again. And after that fight, Bigfoot Silva goes on to fight Andrei Arlovsky, loses by first-round knockout, fights Frank Mir, loses by first-round knockout, beats Soa Palele, great, UFC 190 on another Rousey card. Then they match up again, UFC 193. And for Mark Hunt, after he fights Bigfoot the first time, beats Roy Nelson by knockout, loses to Verdum, loses Stipe Miocic. All right, here you go, Bigfoot Silva again. So I would say that at the time, Mark Hunt was facing the tougher competition. I mean, yeah, maybe
quite a bit.
Records don't mean anything. Rankings at the time don't mean anything. The gambling odds, who cares? These guys meet up again. You're probably thinking Mark Hunt's going to win. And UFC 193 at the time, probably the biggest event or most attended event at the time. If I'm not mistaken, it was at the Etihad Stadium.
I believe it was, yeah. It was number one at the time before Israel and Whitaker took over.
Yeah, it was huge. And again, like, you're talking Israel and Robert Whitaker, it's the same thing. It's the same arena. At the time, it was the Etihad Stadium. Now it's the Marvel Stadium. But it was in Melbourne, Australia, as they say. And again, we finally get the rematch of the best fight of all time. And it wasn't that great. I mean, Mark Hunt knocks him out in the first round. So if you're a Bigfoot Silva stan, sorry, I know the end of his career didn't go as well as some of the other parts of his career, especially his kickboxing debut against Rico Verhoeven. If you want to go back to 2017. Sorry for slagging so hard on Bigfoot Silva, but that first fight, so good. Make sure you check it out. Let us know who your picks are for greatest heavyweight fights of all time. Matt, can you rattle off a few more? I mean, you said Stipe DC2.
So Stipe DC2, just because
the two Frank Mir, Brock Lesnar fights.
No, they don't do it for me. The trilogy between Kane and JDS, of course, because that's really the only heavyweight trilogy other than hopefully Stipe and DC that we get within the next year or so. We don't see trilogies in MMA all that often. You think about them and you're like, yeah, they kind of happen, but not really when you think about it. And it's not often that you do have two guys who are good enough to split the first two fights and then have that big build up for the third. So the way JDS was able to completely starch Cain Velasquez in the first fight, knocks him out in under a minute, and then have Cain, I'll say completely starch JDS, but in the exact opposite way. He did it in Cain Velasquez way. I'm going to beat you up for 25 minutes, wins that really one-sided decision. And then in the third fight, I know Cain wins by TKO in kind of a sad way because Junior just gets tired and he gets beat up so badly. But Junior, even in that third fight, people never really gave him credit for it. He lands hard shots on Cain Velasquez, and it is quite competitive. It's just Velasquez, of course, kind of able to outgrind him. But that trilogy, if you can sit down and watch it from start to finish, there's so many different stories that are told throughout those three fights. It's just like JDS knocks out Cain, and you really do think he's going to hold the title forever. And then Cain comes back, and it's not even close. And then they have their third fight, and it's just this back and forth war until Cain Velasquez gets the upper hand. I think that's something that you really got to take credit to. Josh Barnett, Daniel Cormier, their fight for the Strikeforce Heavyweight Grand Prix, that was amazing because DC was undersized, he was chubby, no one knew who he was at the time. Josh Barnett, of course, one of the all-time great heavyweights, and Daniel Cormier beat the brakes off that poor man. Like, it was a hard fight to watch by the end of it, picking him up over his head, throwing him, like, it wasn't competitive in the least bit, but it just showed that size doesn't always give you the advantage. If you're just really, really good and a little bit smaller, you can kind of overcome those size. So that was another great one. Can you think
Travis
of any more?
Brown, Alistair Overeem, one that, listen, is Travis Brown that next? And then all of a sudden he beats Alistair Overeem in a way that you would think Alistair Overeem would beat Travis Brown. It's those front kicks under the guard, more or less. So a great win for Travis Brown at the time. And even the fight against Josh Burnett for him, it was like, can he beat these real legit guys? And then eventually he got right up near the top and it didn't work out for him. But still, at the time, big wins.
Verdum versus Velasquez.
Verdum versus Velasquez, where he chokes him out, and then he goes on to fight Stipe Miocic. But still, there's a lot of great heavyweight fights. Make sure you check them out and comment below with your top heavyweight fight of all time. Listen, this is new with Fight Night Picks. It's Fight Night Picks Selects. So let us know, what's our next video going to be? Because you're going to be the one that decides it. Let us know in the comments. We're picking top things. We're talking best walkouts. We're talking best pure boxers, all sorts of different topics. So let us know down below what your pick is or what you'd like us to pick next. As always, you can find us at Fight Night Picks on Twitter and Instagram, at Matt Allen FNP, at Craig Allen FNP. Matt, I want to say, make sure you check out the rest of the content with the channel.
Right over there.
As always, hey, listen. We say this at every end of every video. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.